Welcome to our June 18 homeschool day. It's about 9:50 a.m. We're done with chores and breakfast. We will start school officially in about 20 minutes, but I want to share with you, before we start school, some tips on avoiding burnout and finding the joy in homeschool. So before we start, I'm going to share with you some of the things that I do that help me stay motivated, because it can be a lot of work staying motivated for, even if it's only 1 year of homeschooling, it can take a lot of work. I think that longevity in homeschooling has a lot to do with what brings you joy as a teacher. Burnout is a real thing that we have to really mind when it comes to anything, but especially with something like homeschooling. The one thing that I've learned through experience, but then recently learned through a class that I was in, was that as a teacher, do the things that bring you joy. So what does that mean in a homeschool environment? Because a lot of the things that we're doing maybe are more obligations rather than things that we would associate with something pleasurable or something that would bring us joy. So the way that I've interpreted that, or the way that I have practiced that rather, is that when we're choosing our units or main lesson blocks, I'm going to focus on things that I know will be engaging, not just for the kids, but for me in particular. So maybe that's books that I'm choosing that I find intriguing, or that I think would be something that I would learn from as well, so that I can bring that enthusiasm and excitement to the lessons. So I might choose books that I think are interesting. I might choose projects that I find interesting. I might set up our school day in a way that suits my needs as much as it suits my children's needs. We often forget ourselves when it comes to anything regarding parenting, but we're now adding something on top of parenting, that is homeschooling. And in my opinion, if we're homeschooling, we've already put our children's needs at the forefront of that decision, right? I'm not sure that we're homeschooling for our needs. That remains to be something to be argued, possibly, right? We could argue that maybe we are homeschooling for our own needs, but let's just say that for the most part, we are homeschooling in order to serve our children. So already our children are at the forefront of that decision. How do we include ourselves in that decision so that we are not burnt out within the first few months of homeschooling, or that we're not in despair throughout our homeschooling journey? What kinds of things can we do to keep our motivation up, to keep our enthusiasm high? If possible, this is not the case every year. This is not the case every week, every month, every day. There are certainly going to be times when we are frustrated or we're not enjoying the process. That is part of life. It would be abnormal that we are always in excitement about our lessons. But what can we do to bring excitement to the lessons so that we can hold our motivation and our enthusiasm, so that we can be in this for the long run, if we're considering a marathon versus a sprint, for instance? So some of the things that bring me joy are my homeschool space. So a lot of times you've seen our homeschool space, and it does not make children smarter. It does not make them more engaged in school. It doesn't make them more focused. In my opinion, a homeschool space doesn't do any of those things for the student, but a homeschool space can bring a parent or a teacher joy. How we decorate this space, the things that I put out that bring me joy, all of this makes me like being in this space. If I like being here, and it's not to say that the children don't like being here, but it brings me joy. And hopefully what brings you joy as a teacher, as a parent, can bring your children joy as well. We're not creating a space that wouldn't bring them joy, but we are putting ourselves as a priority in this, as much as we're making homeschool a priority. And I truly believe that people understand that, but sometimes being very clear about that is important. So the clarity around that is this. I personally am not creating a space that would not be conducive for my children, but I am creating a space that brings me joy. So when I display a lot of the books and the projects and the the materials that we use for homeschooling that bring me joy. So just looking at this bookcase brings me joy. And so if I am in joy in coming into our homeschooling space, then that keeps my motivation high. That keeps my happiness about and contentment about being in this space high, so that I can do the hard work, because teaching is not always easy. In fact, a lot of it can be enjoyable, but a lot of it can be very challenging. You can run into a lot of hurdles when it comes to how children are receiving it, or interrupting, or not doing their work, or not paying attention, or not staying focused, or their work is not to your standard. All of those things can be really challenging. I am at the tail end of my homeschooling journey. So I am currently homeschooling one 14-year-old. My sons have since graduated from our homeschool and from university, etc. jobs. They're much older. So I am down to homeschooling just one student. There were times, and maybe you're in the thick of it, so you're very much understanding how challenging it can be when you're homeschooling with a toddler, with a baby, with an infant, while being pregnant, while moving, while there's a death in the family, while caring for elderly parents, while caring for a sick child, while caring with someone with special needs. All of those life challenges, and that's really just related to the family. There could be things that are personal or financial that are complicating the process even further. So all of those things together make parenting and homeschooling very challenging. And so if you can pick even the smallest joy, even if it's like I'm drinking my morning tea or coffee out of a mug that brings me joy, then do it. I'm going to add, sprinkles on top of my whipped cream on my coffee. Like those little things, I know it seems silly, but they can bring you so much joy. And that can help with the next 10 minutes of homeschooling, or the next half an hour of having a challenging situation with a child, or, your toddler didn't sleep all night, or now they've destroyed the kitchen because they got into your bag of flour and that's all over the floor. And a lot of these stories are I say them because we've experienced them. We've experienced challenging moments. They're adorable in retrospect, but they've been challenging in the moment when toddlers get into all kinds of things that they're not supposed to get into, that then add stress, or they slow you down. And so finding those things that can bring you joy. So what are the things that I've done in the past? Sometimes it's reorganizing my space. I know that that's not going to bring joy to a lot of people. For me, reorganizing my space sometimes means that I'm finding things that I forgot about, or I am now enjoying things in a different way because I've put them in places that I can see. So reorganizing my space has brought me joy in the past, and that has given me that little bit of motivation and energy that can help me get through that next main lesson block, or that next quarter or semester or year of school, because my space has been spruced up or it's a little bit different. Something else that has brought me joy in the past is starting a new main lesson block. The same excitement that some people get in starting a new school year, and this is not for everyone, but starting a new school year can be really exciting for some people because they're buying new curriculum, or they're diving into new curriculum, or they're diving into a new school year, or they have new classes or new things that they are doing. That kind of excitement I love getting throughout the year whenever we start a new main lesson block. Now, this might not be the way that you're homeschooling by doing main lesson blocks. You might consider a unit study approach just for some of your lessons, just to have that excitement. It could also be going on a field trip or starting a new play date group. Those kinds of things will bring you, hopefully, that little bit of excitement. Yes, it can also come with challenges. Driving places for a field trip, the weather could be a complication. The traffic, packing lunches, or maybe there could be social squabbles at a play date, or, managing yes, that's all going to come with complications as well. So it's not like everything that not everything I'm suggesting is just going to be perfectly beautiful and bring you joy. All of those beautiful things that bring you joy can also include new separate challenges. The other thing that I find that used to bring me joy, or that still brings me joy, especially when starting a new main lesson block or a new unit study, is the new material that we're going to use. Now, in the past, I would get new material from the library. And then in the past, I got new material by buying those books. We had educational funding that we could use that for. And so if buying those new materials isn't in your budget, and we have a lot of books, and books are easy to get because most people have access to a library. If you don't, then maybe having a group of friends where you're sharing books is a way to go. I tried to do that one year with our homeschooling. It didn't work out so well, where I pack up like a little unit study with like books and projects, and I thought that they could just be passed around within our homeschooling group, and then other people could do the same thing. But if you're not all homeschooling the same way, it's just not going to go over very well, and it just wasn't a successful idea. But if buying the books isn't available to you, then definitely the library. And if the library isn't, then maybe collecting a few people to do this might work. But getting new books always brought me so much joy. There was one year when we were traveling, we were living in another state just for a year. And that library system in the state that I was in was so superior to our current library system. It was amazing. I would decide, okay, we're doing this unit coming up. And because we were in another state, we did a lot of local history as part of our main lesson blocks and unit studies, because we were just going to do what was local. We were going to learn about local history. We were going to go to local museums and other things that just made us really feel connected to our space locally. So I would go to the library system. I would go into their website, and I would search whatever topic we were doing. So it might have been, we might have done a Western movement unit, or at the time we were living in Texas, so like Texas history. And I would just put in all the topic areas, subject areas, and all of and also I can't remember, I might have put, say, like youth books versus adult books or picture books. I might have done that. I can't remember at the moment what my search topics were, or my filters were rather. And then hundreds of books would come up, or dozens of books would come up. And I felt like I was on a shopping spree. I would just mark all of the books that I wanted. It just go into, it's not a cart at the library system. I think like maybe it's your bag. And then I would put the library that I wanted it. And here's the best part, because at the time I had a toddler and a kindergartner. And so it wasn't as convenient just to go and browse at the library. When you have a toddler, toddlers have their own minds. They do their own things. You can't really contain them. So my toddler would just complicate sometimes a library visit. So what I would do is I'd put it all for local pickup, and I would just go in and I'd have a stack of 40 books, and I would be in and out within 5 minutes, and I could get all the books that I wanted. That brought me so much joy, because we would come home, we would go through the books, we would read them. It would just be so enjoyable. And then the best part, we would just give them back. We didn't have to figure out where to store them, where to put them. If we didn't like them, we liked them, whatever it was, we'd just give them back. It was the easiest, most lovely thing. And some libraries even allow you to check out other things like puzzles or games, or audiobooks, of course. And then there are the online checkouts too, which are a lot more common now, where you can actually check out an audiobook online, which is great. So those are the things that would bring me so much joy, because I would have the joy of looking for the things that we wanted, which is its own separate way to bring you joy, and then the joy of actually receiving them and using them within our homeschool. Those kinds of things were things that I loved so much about the approach that we use with our homeschooling, because we could have that joy that is typically reserved for the beginning of the year. We could have that throughout the year. Okay, other things, this now stepping away from like the actual homeschooling experience, it's now the personal experience. What's going to bring you joy? And one of the things that brought me joy, which I did not probably value as much as I value in retrospect, and that was my friendships. The friendships that I had throughout our homeschooling journey, which were almost exclusively related to the friendships my children had, or friendships within the homeschooling arena, let's call it. So that would be friendships that maybe our kids weren't necessarily in the same grade, or my kids maybe weren't necessarily friends with my friends' children, but we were all experiencing the homeschooling journey together. And so those friendships were so valuable for me because we were able to be ourselves in those friendships, share our challenges, and have other friends understand those uniquely because we were all homeschooling. So friendships was a really big thing that helped keep us going because we could relate to one another's journey. We could vent without judgment, and we could find solutions. And then sometimes it was just hearing us out. We didn't always have to find solutions. It was just, we're going through the same thing. So having friends who were homeschooling, but also more importantly, if you are homeschooling, you realize that a lot of the challenges that you're having are more parenting challenges, raising children challenges. Very few of them were literally homeschool challenges. They were primarily about parenting. So having friends that were also parents, of course, is what really helped in finding camaraderie in relationships during those challenging times of parenting and homeschooling. So those are a few of the things that really helped me during my journey. I have to say, however, there are moments in time, so when you are experiencing challenges like with a move, with a death in the family, with a new child, and then a whole host of other challenges as well. But those are three that were really big for me, that your excitement, your joy is going to dip. In my opinion, you will get to like the homeschool blues for sure. You can even get that throughout the year. I find that January is a big time for the homeschool blues. We just want to avoid depression. Depression is really hard to recover from. And so you could definitely have the blues, which you could recover from. When you hit depression, that's a different story. We really want to avoid that, want to avoid getting it to be something that's clinical. And for that part, like that part worries me. If people are experiencing so much homeschool blues that it goes into something that's more serious, we want to avoid that for sure. The other thing is that, so those are milestones that you might encounter that could get you to the homeschool blues. So having a new child might get you to the homeschool blues. You want to avoid depression. Either moving homes, moving states, etc., can get you to the homeschool blues, can just get you to the blues in general. We want to avoid depression. A new phenomenon that I'm experiencing is I'm not sure what we would categorize it, but something in your 40s and 50s, that age range, the tail end of homeschooling, the beginning of empty nest state. Do you call it a syndrome? I'm not sure what you call it. And then the physical changes that occur, especially for women, I'm sure they are with men as well, during this time period. That is a new, entirely different level of, I don't want to call it depression, but a new level of homeschool blues. I think just blues in general. That is a new challenge that I'm in the midst of. So I can't really speak on it yet because I'm still in the middle of it. So it's hard to identify exactly what it is. But I just want to say that that does occur, at least for me. And I know that with a lot of my friends who I've spoken with regarding this is a really big challenge that we are all facing at this time in our homeschooling journey, which I think is more related to just our life journey, being women in our 40s and 50s. So I hope this was helpful for you. I would love to know your own tips and things that bring you joy in your homeschooling that can help you during your journey. I have to share with you something that brought me so much joy this morning, and that is this chalkboard here. So forever it's had an illustration of an owl, which didn't mean much to me, but this means so much to me. This is a bunch of trigonometry that I will share with you. I didn't do this. My son did this. My son wrote this up for me because yesterday we were talking about, he came in when we were doing our lessons and he saw the main lesson book that I was using to help with a lesson. And he's like, oh, that looks really beautiful. And so then I pulled out his main lesson book so that he could see his old work, and he was delighted by it. So he was with us while we were doing a lesson, and the lesson involved, I just used this globe as an example because I was trying to explain to my daughter during our lesson on latitude and longitude about the distance between each longitude line. So there's 1 degree. There can be literally 360 lines of longitude and latitude, but for the ease of, writing it on globes and whatnot, we definitely have 24 to indicate each hour of difference in the time zones, right? So each of these lines of longitude represent 15 degrees. But the distance, the mile distance between them, actually changes whether you're at the circumference or at the poles. And there is a very simple formula to figure that out, and it is the circumference of the planet, so 24,900, times the cosine of your latitude, so the angle of your latitude, then gives you the circumference at that point. Okay, so I had just learned this in trying to understand this for one of our lessons, and I was really excited about it because I was like, oh, this is a great way to bring in cosine, sine, tangent, because that is a trigonometry lesson that we actually do in geometry. So part of our geometry main lesson block includes this really beautiful demonstration or activity that goes through every single line, or sorry, every single angle, which I think they actually go by 10-degree angles to figure out the tangent of each angle on a circle. I think it was tangent. I could be mistaken. I have to review the geometry. I apologize if this is incorrect. So being able to go through, because cosine, sine, and tangent have to do with like adjacent over hypotenuse or opposite over hypotenuse, etc. I apologize. I know that I'm just saying all of it wrong at the moment just to explain my excitement over one piece of trigonometry that related to our astronomy lesson. In doing this, of course, I barely knew it. I was like, this is fascinating. Like, oh, this makes so much sense why the circumference at a higher latitude is so much less, but it is not linear, because if you take 45 degrees of latitude, it's actually, I can't remember right now, I think like 17,000 versus 12,000 if it was more linear, because 24,900 versus 0 if you're right at the pole. But if you're midway, it's actually not halfway between 24,900 and 0. So that would be roughly 12,500, but it's closer to like 17,000. But that's because it's a globe and it's not linear. Anyway, all of that math was absolutely fascinating to me, over the head of my daughter right now, because we haven't learned this stuff. However, my son knew it perfectly. Like he was explaining all of it from a mathematical perspective, and I was in awe because there were so many. As a homeschool teacher, you know so much compared to your children for a very limited period of time. And even when you know more than your child, supposedly, they know more than you in a particular subject area. Or I always relate the example of 5-year-olds know so much about dinosaurs more than their parents, right? So as young as 5 and probably younger, children will know more than you in something, okay? So for the longest time, I was the homeschool parent, right? I'm teaching these things. There is a transition for us. It was, say, 10th grade or 9th grade, 10th grade, where that shift happens, where all the things that I've taught them pales in comparison. This is academic. This is not like life, compared to the 1 year of information, knowledge, academics that they learn at community college, 2 years, 3 years. Now my son is deep into his major, having completed community college, having finished 1 year of university at, because he transferred. So that's, finishing his junior year, let's say, at university. So those kinds of classes, upper division classes. So, and a lot of math, because one of his majors is applied math. So knowing so much more than I ever did, even with my chemistry degree. So knowing above and beyond. I think all of my kids, all of my children who have finished college and university know far more math than I ever did. And with a chemistry degree, we know quite a bit of math. I mean, I'm just using math as an example, okay? So now I'm here trying to teach this concept, and he knows it so deeply above and beyond what I know. So he did this for me. He wrote it all out for me. He's going to come and give us a lesson, and I'm just bursting with happiness. I'm so excited. So he's written all of this stuff out for us. He's going to come and give us a lesson. But this is one of the things that delights me so much about astronomy. It delights me so much about what our children are capable of when they get deep into their field and into their love of study, whatever it is. Like, I'm overjoyed, excited. But everything about astronomy brings me so much joy. I love it so much. I didn't realize how much I love it, but every time I learn something new about it, it makes me even more in awe of the subject area. It's about 2:50 p.m. and we are finally starting with our opening activities. We've had a really productive morning, and so we're going to start with Mission to Mars. I keep calling it Mission to Mars. It's Destination Mars. We're going to start with Destination Mars, our mental math, and then our lessons for the day. It's 4:45 p.m. and we're just now starting Galileo for kids. We have 10 pages to read. We are on page 79. It's so late. It's 6:30 and we still have so many more lessons to do. We've done a lot of work. We've gotten a lot of the written work and the reading done, but we're about to start our mental math. We have this book by Charles Kovacs to do and our main lesson. And this book just came in today. So I have other books in this series. I don't like the illustrations being so basic. And it says my first book on the cosmos, and yet it talks about like dark matter and black holes and things like that. So the title is deceptive, in my opinion, but the content I think is really valuable. And what I like about it, I only just got it, I only browsed through it. So it's intended for really young children. I don't think these concepts are for really young children. I think that the way this book is presented is in a way that older children, middle school, even high school, and adults can understand really complex scientific phenomena. This book does a brilliant job in making it simple. It's not dumbing it down or babying it. It just makes it simple. And that's what I like about it. This as a book for young children, absolutely not. In my opinion, this is not the content for young children. It's talking about things that I think we as adults even struggle to fully understand. When you're talking about the escape velocity of a black hole being more than the speed of light, these kinds of concepts I think are beyond young children. But for us in our astronomy unit for middle school, I think it's going to be a really fun addition. So let's go ahead and get started on our mental math for the day. The first question is 25% of 36. 76. And the last question is 54 divided by 6 times 0.9. 8.1. Very good. All right. We are about to start on... Oh, we finished Galileo. Did I already talk about that? We finished Galileo. On to this book, but I think we need to do one more opening activity before we dive in. And what time is it? It's almost 6:45 p.m. We are ending very late today because we still have several lessons to do. So I'm thinking 8 p.m. maybe? Oh my goodness, it's gonna be so late. Let's start with Destination Mars. These are my cards. And then we'll do some reading. It's 6:48. We just finished our game of Destination Mars, and we're going to start on this book, Faraway Worlds, as part of our continued opening activities. This one's just a really fun book to read and imagine what other planets might look like. So it doesn't really support our main lessons necessarily, but the illustrations in here are stunning let's begin. Today we know more than 100 planets orbiting distant stars. It's 7 p.m. We just finished reading a few pages of Faraway Worlds. Let's read our selection in Planetarium. We're up to the sun, and we'll probably just read 2 pages today. The sun. At the center of our solar... It's 7:05. We just finished reading 2 pages. I wonder if there's more on the sun. Yep, there is. So that's exciting for tomorrow. We decided to skip 2 chapters for the Charles Kovacs book and jump to chapter 33 on Pythagoras. Today is... Today Tuesday or Wednesday? Today's Wednesday. So today's Wednesday. We only have Thursday and Friday. And these next chapters are my favorite. Ptolemy, Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Kepler. And so what we are going to do is that next week I have Waldorf teacher training for an entire week. It's on the practical arts. And that was another week that we had intended to do school. So we're not, I can assign my daughter some things, but for the most part, I'm not going to be doing any lessons. And then Monday is June 30th. That would have been our last day of school. But technically, I think it's going to be Friday as our last day of school, which means that I think the best option for us is to start the first week of August. And we will do, at that point, an astronomy block as the first main lesson block of the year, and then continue with chemistry. And I think we're done with anatomy. We still have some main lessons to write up, but we're done with anatomy. So we're definitely not going to finish our astronomy this year. We're going to have to roll it over until next year, which we will start early August. I like to start in September, but that's not going to be possible this year. And chemistry as well. And we'll continue with chemistry and progress with physics and algebra and geometry. Those are going to be the focuses of our lessons for next year. Okay, so let's begin. So chapter 33, Pythagoras. Before going on to what is... It's 7:50. We just finished this chapter in our astronomy book by Charles Kovacs. This chapter was the longest one we did so far, and it was packed with information. It was such a full chapter. So the last thing we have to do, it is really late at this point, but it looks like we're fixing to finish right around 8 p.m., which is not ideal, but it's just, that's what's going to happen today. And that is to finish the lesson that we started yesterday. I had intended to go over a review this morning, which we didn't do. But rather than go over longitude and latitude again, oh, I forgot, we actually did. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot about this. This whole chalkboard lesson that I had shared with you this morning, my son actually spent about 40 minutes going over all of this geometry, trigonometry rather, actually. And it was, my daughter wasn't ready for this, but I was, and I asked lots of questions, and that was really enjoyable. But we are going to finish off our day with the lesson on the 4 seasons, and we will start with 1 of the 4 seasons. So this maybe 2 of the 4 seasons, so that we can finish by Friday. It's 7:51, and we are going to start with, what was the first season that I did? Winter. We're gonna do winter and spring today. So this is all of the write-ups that I did for the season, specifically for the chaparral and for Southern California, different from other parts of the state and of the country. But this will be what we talk about today based on our astronomy lesson. It's 8:05. We just finished doing winter. We decided to save spring for tomorrow. My daughter has 1 more writing lesson to do for Copernicus. She's done the rest of the reading, I believe, for today. So just 1 more writing assignment, and that's it. So she's going to quickly do that. But for the most part, our school day is done. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday, and I'll see you Thursday.